in honor of May 12th, Fibromyalgia Awareness Day, I wanted to record this little small practice for those members of our studio who aren't always able to join us because the symptoms of fibromyalgia might be keeping them from coming in. They may be having assorted aches and pains throughout their body. They might be very frustrated. They might be in a cognitive haze. So for that reason, I just want to record a little home-based practice wearing purple for today. Let's come to our seated Tadasana pose. This isn't going to be an elaborate practice. When you're having good days, you can do a lot of kind of ooh-ah poses maybe. Or maybe Tadasana standing is your ooh-ah pose for that day. For today, though, we can just do a little basic practice. We start by coming into our seated Tadasana. What do I mean by into? There's noises all around us, especially right now. So just notice your inner space, for lack of a better word, or one less cliched. Notice how you're feeling right now. It may not be the best you've ever felt. Doesn't matter. We're just observing the signals, just as you might observe a weather report, even if the weather the next day isn't something you want. We're just observing what's present. We need to notice where we're tight, and then what kind of tightness that may be. Sometimes our tightness is a result of a strong muscle that's constricted. But sometimes it's because of tension. Sometimes it's from a very weak muscle, one weakened from spending a lot of time in a tense mode. When we have those weak muscles, it's important to notice where they are because they have to relax before we stretch them, or else we're risking injury. So we're just noticing maybe some shoulders that need to loosen up, maybe some back muscles that haven't been serving our posture as well as they could. Just loosening up, finding our most comfortable position. If we need extra cushion, perhaps grabbing a blanket or a towel. Once you've found your Tadasana seat with your knees, hips distance apart, feet directly beneath the knees are lining up with the hips so we aren't feeling any tension in any of our joints. Once we find that, bring your hands to your belly. Drop your breath down to your belly. Notice that it was probably here in this middle part of our chest. That's where it likes to hang out when we're stressed. We can have a hand on both if we like, just observing the difference in sensation. After we've figured out how to draw our belly breath down, maybe we explore this inner terrain of our breath, breathing into our belly. After that's full, continuing into our middle chest. After that's full, maybe trying for the upper chest, into the clavicular breath. And then as we exhale, feeling it leave those parts. This wave of breath, this 3-part yogic breath, is a very simple way to get centered. It's a very simple way to just observe your body. Sometimes bringing breath to a particular location can help us really figure out what's going on inside. Observe those sensations that perhaps we've learned to deaden our senses toward or ignore. When there are a lot of sensations, particularly pain receptors, sometimes we try to ignore it, try to suppress it as much as possible. Every messenger has something that they're bringing, and sometimes we've already heard the message. Yes, I get it. I'm just going to hurt right now, and there's not a scientifically or medically determined reason for that. Instead, we're just going to observe the sensation without classifying it as pleasure or pain, without trying to change it. By doing so, we're hoping that it'll sort of change itself a little bit. So we'll continue with our 3-part breath. And if at any point in the practice you find yourself getting frustrated with your body, frustrated with sensation, just return to that 3-part breath, coming to this strong Tadasana seated pose. Breathing into your belly, into your middle chest, and into your upper chest. Next we'll move on to some movement. Bringing our head from side to side. Inhaling up, exhaling over. Hanging out here. Right now the ear is going directly toward the shoulder, so we're noticing if our chin's dropping or lifting. Just straight over to the side. Inhale. Exhale. Over to the other side. Don't really worry about if it's right or left right now. It doesn't matter. You can go at whatever pace feels good to you. Just noticing where you maybe have some tension that needs a little extra care. Maybe you spend more time on one side than the other, just because that's what you need today. Now we'll turn. Maybe we line our chin up to our shoulder. Maybe we don't. Next, exhale. Return to the center. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, turn. And hang out here for a breath. Just noticing what neck and shoulder muscles need a little more attention today. Observing that this is a different body than we had yesterday or the day before. Whatever's going on in it is going to be different depending on how we've used our body in the last few days. Next, exhale, return to neutral. Inhale, lengthen. Inhale, bring your arms up, interlace your fingers. If you weren't ready for that inhalation and you need longer, that's fine. Your exhalation, elbows come together and we drop our chin toward our chest. Now we're not yanking our head down here, we're just using this extra weight to our advantage. If you're like me and your glasses are a little loose these days, you can remove them. Now with each exhalation, imagine that air going down your back, into your shoulders, into your upper back, finding that tension. Inhale, observe whatever's going on in your shoulders and your back. Exhale, let's see if we can release it, find some ease. Next exhalation, drop your hands, then lift your head. We don't want to give our neck any greater resistance than necessary. Find your breath. Your next exhalation, turn to one side. Here I'm bringing my right hand to the outside of my left knee. It doesn't really matter what side. Now notice as you press your hand into your knee, it wants to cave in. So we're going to press the knee into the hand. We've got this dynamic stillness. Two things moving toward each other with equal resistance, creating that sort of stillness. Find your sitting bones pressing into your chair. Ischial tuberosities, sometimes called sits bones. I'm calling them sitting because they're what you're sitting on. Press them down. Lengthen your spine up. Maybe draw your navel in just a little bit. See if that deepens your twist. Your next exhalation, release. Return to center. Inhale, lengthen up. Exhale, come over to the other side. Maybe the hand comes to the back of the chair, maybe it doesn't. Maybe we like the palm facing outward. Just experiment. Find what feels natural in your body. The action we're focused on here is the spine twisting, bringing length into the neck. But we're also noticing that strengthening in the hips, perhaps a little in the shoulder. Next exhalation, return to neutral. Little hip openers. If we're very, very tight, we can extend one leg and start here. If we're not that tight, we can bring our foot above the knee and then slowly work to bring our foot back. So anywhere on that spectrum is fine. I don't know what you need today. So it's going to be up to you to figure out what you need today. Flex through your heels. So we're feeling this nice strong line coming through here. Noticing if we have any torque at the ankle. And I'm working to drop my knee down. Now you might need to scooch forward on your chair a little bit for this. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable under the hip bone. We're just hanging out here. This is a modified pigeon pose. Maybe we like our hands down at the side. Maybe we like them nice and loose. It's just up to you. We're focusing on opening up that hip right now. When you're ready, go ahead and release. You can come back into your chair a little bit. If it's accessible to you, bring your heel up here. What if it's not accessible to me? Then don't. You can just hang out sitting. Bringing your awareness to your breath. If your knee's up, then you're getting a benefit. If right now you can't bring the knee up, then you don't need that benefit. You have other concerns. So just focus on your breath. And release. Now let's switch to the other side. Maybe starting here, maybe starting here. Maybe we're here. Notice how each side might be a little different. Right now I'm a little tighter on this side. This is my right. So I work to drop it down. This is a hip where I tend to have a lot of issues. So this is a practice I have to do pretty often, trying to keep it open. Maybe I'm lengthening up with my arms loose at the side. Maybe my palms are face up in my lap. Just find a position that feels good. And then we can uncross, sit back, maybe bring the heel up. If you can't bring the heel up today, stay with me. Press your sitting bones into your chair, lift up. I had a teacher who once said we shouldn't call them sitting bones, we should call them sits bones if we're using informal language, and ischial tuberosities if we're using formal language. And then asked someone who spoke German what the word sits means. And it was essentially the bones you're sitting on. So I've decided I'm going to stick with that. Exhale, bring your leg down. Now let's see how we feel about eagle pose. Full eagle standing can be quite a lot. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to cross our legs over. Maybe if we've got some extra maneuverability in the hips today, we bring it all the way around the back. Bring that foot around almost to the side. You can kind of maybe see my toe starting to stick out here. And we can start out just giving ourselves a little hug. Sometimes that's enough. If we want, we can go into full pose. So here, I'm going to do this a little modified. Let's bring, in this case, I've got my right arm up, left elbows coming underneath. And here, I'm going to face the palms toward each other. Sometimes we do it this way. We're doing it palms toward each other today. Let me see if we can find our hands, lift our elbows up, bring our palms out so that our forearms are a 90-degree angle. Maybe that's not what's happening today. Maybe we look a little like this. Maybe we're forming a little thing. Maybe we're more like this. Doesn't really matter to me. Just matters if you're feeling a stretch in your shoulders. You can go ahead and release your legs first. We've had that going for a while. Release your arms. Give yourself a little hug. Now we're switching to the other side. Here I have my right leg crossed over and around my left, coming around the other side. Left arm out in front, right arm under. I'm forming an X at my elbows. Sometimes it's at the forearms, but ideally it's at the elbows. That way it's really easy for the palms to come together and lift up. Notice your forearms. Just look at them. Bring your gaze to the softest, most joyful gaze you have available. Soften your face. Your exhalation, release your arms, release your legs. You might want a strap for this next one. You don't need a strap necessarily. You can grab onto your shirt. I have an open back shirt today, so that makes it a little harder for me. Fold your strap into quarters. You don't have to, but sometimes a lot of length is annoying. I like to hold the part that might conk me in the head. You don't have to. Your mileage may vary. Cross your left over your right. Really press your knees together. We don't have to worry about the foot coming around the back this time. Bring your strap into your right hand. Inhale, right arm comes up. Palm is facing the ear, and as you exhale, we're just bending at the elbow. Notice how the hand naturally falls behind the head. Inhale, your left arm comes up, thumb points down. This allows us to have the best shoulder range of motion as we reach back up, trying to find our strap. Now, maybe we don't need our strap. Maybe our hands come together quite easily. For a lot of us, that's not going to be the case, though, especially if you're having a fibromyalgia pain. Maybe what we do is something more like this that day. Return your awareness to your breath again. With each exhalation, feel those shoulder muscles releasing, sliding down your back towards your tailbone. Release your hands, uncross your legs, and we'll switch to the other side. Strap is in the left hand. Maybe it wound up there naturally, maybe not. Inhale, left arm up, palm facing the ear. Exhale, bend behind you. Inhale, right arm up. Exhale, back. Find your strap. Now, if you had to tilt your head forward, make sure you lift your neck up to proper alignment. You don't want to cause any strain on those neck muscles. You may have a bit of a forward head posture. Those of us who tend to sit a lot have that. So drop your chin, draw your chin back until your ears are directly over your shoulders. Release your hands, release your shoulders, uncross your legs. Do a little chair cat-cow. Your exhalation, draw your shoulders back, draw your navel in, drop your head. On your inhalation, leading with the crown of your head, swoop up, then lead with your chest, coming to this, for lack of a better word, cow. Exhale down. So if you're familiar with the pose on the hands and knees, this is going to make complete sense. Inhale up. If you're not, this might seem a little weird. Exhale down. One more time. Inhale up. And exhale down. Remember that the depth and peak of this pose are set by you. You're going to figure out what your maximum range is, and it's not for anyone else to figure out. So if your version today is maybe a little like that, then that's perfect. That's where you are today. Let's see about standing up. Let's roll out our ankles. First, we'll see if we can get our hips set. Notice that because my chair is not a mat, it slid back a little bit there, so just be aware of that. Yours might be on a mat. If you do use a mat for your chair, just walking my feet back in. Be careful it's not a nice mat. it will usually cause some issues. Okay, so for this part, we can use our wall and our chair. Maybe I'm just bending my knees a little bit into this modified chair pose. Now this is something you can do in a chair too, but right now we're doing it standing. I'll show you in a chair in a sec if you like that better. Maybe if we're feeling confident as we drop our chest, we can lift our arms up. Now, if we're standing, we can stay there. Those of you who want to stay in a chair, your chair pose looks a little like this. So notice my legs are still active, just like if I were standing. I'm noticing that tension between wanting to go out and wanting to come in. And I'm using those muscles together, firing here, trying to maintain this dynamic stillness. Arms are up, they're about at our ears, and we're leaning our chest forward. Now when you're standing, it's all the more important to lean the chest forward. We want to watch out for the knees crossing the tops of our toes. So if you just bend your knees and you're straight up, this is how they used to do it in Ashtanga, then you wind up having your knees cross your toes. But if we draw our hips back, we can come up like so. And I'm just kind of leaning against the wall for a little extra support. It's up to you. Maybe we just use the wall for a little bit of balance. This could be a lot for somebody on some days, so maybe we don't do this. Maybe this is just an extended practice. We see about bringing our knee up. This is very similar to the action we had earlier when we were lifting our foot up to our chair. So notice right now I'm off to the side. We can also just be facing it directly. Just notice how that hits different parts of your hip. A lot of times people with fibro have a lot of issues in shoulders and hips. And we can also have it open out to the side. That's going to hit a little more in the back of the hip. And then face forward, drop your foot. Let's move to the other side. So I'll start out personally at this little diagonal. I kind of like that. It's a nice way to sort of start opening the hip up. And then maybe I'll bring it a little more in front. Obviously some of the choices I'm making here with chair position are so you can see it. You can put your props wherever they work best. And then I'll bring it out to the side, get a little more hip opening this direction. And then bring my foot off. Now maybe we're still feeling okay with the chair. Maybe we want to try for a chair triangle. Might still seem like a lot. So I'm going to do this in a very narrow stride. My full triangle pose is going to be a much longer stride. But a lot of people, that's just going to be a lot, especially if you're suffering from fibro right now. So maybe we just have a nice short stride. I tend to line my heel up to the inner arch of my back foot. Back foot is kicked out slightly at an angle. I'll move this block so you can see. So it's not like a perfect 90 degree. It's actually got a little bit of angle there. I work to open my hips. I'm kind of running parallel to this wall behind me. So I exhale, I'm coming directly over to the side. Hand comes to my hip. And then maybe I just set my hand on my chair. So if you're familiar with full triangle pose, this is obviously a pretty significant modification. But the parts of the pose that matter, that opening of the chest, the opening of the hips, the stabilizing the legs down into the floor, all of those things are still present. It's just not the most extreme version of the pose. Notice if you're kind of falling into your joints here, maybe falling into the knees or the hips, and activate the muscles of your legs. People, when they're starting out with yoga, they don't really know what you mean by activation. And it's the difference between tightness, tension, and just using your muscles. So you might tighten a muscle, you might just make it active. Bend your front knee. Go ahead and straighten up. And then we'll come to the other side. Now here you might not be able to see all of the work that's going on in the torso. And there's a little bit of rotation if we're doing the full version. I'm going to widen my stride just a little bit because that's what my body wants right now. You can just pick and choose as you need. I'm checking to see if my hand is as close to directly under my shoulder as possible. You can kind of see how it's really not worth even bringing your arm up in full triangle here because you're just not in the right alignment anyway. So we may as well just keep our hand down at our hip. I've got an external rotation happening at this thigh. So this whole thigh is rotating this direction. This thigh is also rotating out. And I've got a little bit of a twist here in my torso. Now we might not all get that twist in the torso. That's sort of what we're looking for over time. That's going to help us get a little more stretch and space here in this joint. Maybe it hurts the neck to look that way. Maybe we look down at our hand. Maybe we look straight ahead. Doesn't really matter. There are times where drishti, the point of gaze in a pose, can be very important. I think when you're in pain, when you have a medical condition that no one understands or even acknowledges as valid, maybe your point of gaze can be whatever you like. Bend my knee, pop back up to neutral. Both sets of toes face straight ahead. I'm going to come down into this forward fold, wide leg forward fold, Prasarita Padottanasana. Maybe I want to place my forehead on the backs of my forearms. To come out, I'll just bend my knees, press my hands into my chair, heel toe, back to neutral. Maybe I haven't been able to do a lot of that stuff. Maybe this whole time that I've been standing up, you've been sitting there thinking, well, what am I supposed to be doing right now? I can't possibly do any of that. So we can just make some modifications. In the case of chair, we've already talked about what we can do. We sort of already did this hip opener of our Prasarita. We can just step our feet out a little further. If we can't make it all the way to the floor, maybe we have another chair in front of us that we're using. However we need to modify just to start getting a little bit of movement and a little bit of stretch, that's what really matters. It matters that we're active, that we're doing things, that we're trying to take ownership of this body in which we live. It's a very challenging thing to have your body doing things you don't understand, that you'd prefer not to have happen. But it's real and it's happening. So instead, just simple movements can help us feel more embodied and more empowered within our body because we're less caught up in the signals. We're less trying to ignore them, trying to transmute them into something that we prefer. Instead, we're just letting them happen. And that means letting our body be wherever it is today. That means being okay with perhaps an entire practice of just sitting. Maybe you spend 20 minutes moving a little bit to one side, a little bit to the other, just to move, just to keep the signaling going, just to make sure that those pathways to your muscles, whatever is going on in the fascia, which is still very contested right now, all of the electrical signaling, we're just moving a little bit, keeping it going, making sure we're aware of where our body is today. So if through that practice you found yourself frustrated or overly challenged, don't worry about prescriptive yoga. Don't worry about right yoga and wrong yoga. Yoga has very little to do with this physical posturing. It has about an eighth to do with the physical posturing. 8 limbs, asana is just the first one. Focus on your breath. When your breath isn't steady, when your breath becomes choppy, when it's up high, it's not a calm breath and it's not a yoga breath, unless it's intentional. So notice if we're back up here, drop it down here. Let's return to our 3-part breath. This is just a very simple breath. We aren't even doing ujjayi. We aren't doing alternate nostril. Of all of our breaths that we have available in our pranayama arsenal, we're just doing the easiest one. Dropping it down in the belly. After a while, filling the belly, filling the middle chest. Exhaling out of middle and belly. And then belly, middle, upper, and exhaling upper, middle, belly. You can calmly drop your arms to the side. Now if you really like, you can come to a Shavasana pose, laying on your back. For some people, it's just too hard to get up and down from the floor. But if it's available, we can go ahead. Get ourselves a little pillow. Use our chair. Maybe you'll want some more cushion on your chair. That's going to be up to you. And then just come over onto your back. I'm bringing my knees up for a few reasons. One, there's a circulatory benefit. Two, if we have really tight back, it's helpful to have the knees bent when we're laying down. I'm just putting a little bit of a roll under my neck to give it support. Those of us with especially weak neck muscles might find that especially comfortable. I'm trying to notice my chin and forehead in relation to each other. So I have a nice long neck, and then I'm trying to even these out. Arms come out to the side in a position I like to call lower snow angel. If you think about making snow angels, you have upper and lower. It's not out into a T. If you start bringing your arms up past 90 degrees, it rolls your shoulders forward and makes it a little harder to get that breath up into the topmost part of your lungs, that clavicular breath up by your collarbone. Once you've found your position, adjusting your shoulder blades, adjusting your hips, adjusting your feet and knees. Bring your awareness once more to your breath. Every time something arises to distract you from your breath, maybe signaling from your body, maybe a thought, just guide your attention back to your breath. Perhaps a shoulder is making a little bit of noise. Acknowledge that message and then bring your attention back to breathing. If a thought arises that is particularly sticky, it is especially hard to let go of, maybe label it. You can call it a thought, and then come back to your breath, telling yourself inhale, exhale, until you can feel the thought being released. Maybe label that thought as one of imagination, if it's of the future. You don't know anything that's coming after you get up. Any thought of the future, any stresses and anxieties, they're all just imagination because that moment hasn't occurred yet. Maybe you notice a thought of the past, remembering a body that once was, remembering a lifestyle or an expectation. Perhaps you label those memories, knowing that memory is not truth. Memory is something that can become flawed the longer we possess it. Whatever arises, guide your attention back to the act of breathing. For the next few minutes, whatever distraction arises, simply observe it without judgment. as you would a weather report. And then guide your attention back to your breath, like you might guide a toddler who's become distracted back to an activity. Guiding them with warmth, non-judgment, and maybe a little gentleness. Take a deep, cleansing breath. If you're laying on the floor, begin to wiggle your fingers, maybe roll your ankles out. If you're seated in your chair, you can wiggle your hands, maybe move your feet around. Those of us who are on the floor will bring our knees into our belly, give them a little hug. Gently rock from side to side. If you're in your chair, you can just begin to move your knees around, resetting your lower back however you like. I always place my glasses on a block. That way I know they won't get stepped on. Now most of us are going to bring our right arm up beside our right ear. Because of my location, I'm going to turn to the left. Traditionally, we turn to the right, but just this once for demonstration purposes. I think it'll be okay. We take a moment on our side, because the longer our Shavasana and the deeper inward we go, the longer it takes to prepare yourself for this world, this material world with noise and sound and communication and expression. Whenever you're ready, roll slightly forward, using your arms. Push yourself up to a comfortable seated position, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you're on your chair. For me, it's going to be double pigeon today. That's what I'm feeling right now. Ground your sitting bones into the floor, maybe a cushion, maybe a blanket. Lengthen your spine. And then whenever you're ready, bring your palms together in front of your heart and join me as I say Namaste. Namaste literally translates as I bow to you. The I here is that which is best in us, that which connects us together, that which is best in you. It's recognizing that part of us. So thank you for making it to the end of this little fibro class. And here's hoping for greater awareness, greater treatment, and an easier day. Namaste.